And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today, have a little bit of dialogue that we will share with those of you who have chosen to join us. That is the wrong post office box address that is being posted there. Thanks, Restream. Let me fix this. There we go. You can find me at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat, and you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, as we get ready to jump off. And we'll start off by saying hello to some of the people that have been able to chime in so far on the chat on the live portion. And I see Jimmy is here. He says he got in early. He usually doesn't make it to the last 10 minutes. Glad you could get in early today. John is here. Thundercats. No, there's no cats here at the moment. I don't think so. If there is one, I'll point him out. Helter is here. Dragon is here. Country Living is here. Says thumbs up, everyone. Please do. Jane is here. Holly. Bob. Brian. I feel like Magic Mirror on Romper Room. Tuck, Gary, Boogers, Eric is here. Says, hope you are dealing with the holidays. Yes and no. I mean, I don't really do much. It's just my wife and myself at the moment. And so we don't put too much emphasis on the holiday itself specifically. Also, to catch up before I get started with the actual news here, because I had mentioned it at the last second. I had mentioned it at the last second yesterday because I had forgotten. And H12 has joined us. 2 dogs. I don't know what breed, but either lost or abandoned. They came out of the woods and were circling the lake back there. Big breed, 7,500-pound range, brown, long hair. Again, I'm not sure what breed they are. And they kept circling the lake. One of them is actually wearing a harness, but there's no collar on either of them. Or that one had the collar with the harness, but you know what I mean? There's no tags or anything. And they're identical, both males, fixed. Circling the lake and going in and out of people's yards, scavenging. And then they turned up in my yard at 3 a.m. in the morning, not last night, but the night before. And, you know, people weren't able to get hold of them. I got them to trust me enough to get my hands on them. And so somebody's watching. But yeah, so it's not just cats that get dumped out here. It's not just cats. They upset my cats, though. My cats did not like the 2 of them coming into the yard. But yeah, thanks, everybody. Odds are they're abandoned. It happens. It happens. Although we mostly get cats. Brian says, stupid retailers can't wait to squeeze our wallets. That's all Christmas is, not Jesus' so-called birthday or Yeshua's birthday, which would have been sometime in the summer if it's theoretically calculated correctly. But yeah, I watch A Christmas Carol and I find myself to a point identifying with Ebenezer Scrooge because he makes it a point to let you know that Christmas is a commercial endeavor, and B, that why should I donate to charity when you already tax me and spend the money on these people anyways? And I'm listening to that dialogue and I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I'm kind of feeling you there, Ebenezer. Kind of feeling you there. I get it. But anyway, that was the dog story. And I don't have any photos or film because I wasn't thinking of that. You know, I help the animals because I want to help the animals. And I put up a video or a short here and there. And I do it on the cat channel because I have a separate cat channel. But I'm not sitting there going, oh, quick, let me get my phone out and film myself rescuing an animal. I'm not, that's not why I'm doing it. So I don't have any actual pictures of the dogs. And I'd hate to see them separated either because they were like bread and butter. Obviously, they're probably brothers. So that's why I say bread and butter. They were right on each other the whole time. As we get ready to jump off here, and we're going to start talking about, yes, the thumbnail, which is again Fani Willis. Fani. I'm pretty sure it's probably Fani Willis, but whatever. CNBC article coming up here. And yeah, the hammer finally came down on this woman. Been waiting for it for quite a while. Georgia Appeals Court disqualifies DA Fani Willis from the Trump election case, but lets the indictment stand. And there she is. It says a Georgia appeals court on Thursday disqualified Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from overseeing the criminal election interference prosecution of President-elect Trump and other defendants. But the Court of Appeals let stand the indictment against the defendants, who are accused of crimes related to their efforts to overturn Trump's loss in Georgia's 2020 election to Biden, which I don't believe that, but whatever. However, Trump's criminal defense attorney argued later Thursday that the ruling on Willis's part put an effective end to the case against the president-elect, which is very likely true. Willis's office in a filing said it planned to ask the Georgia Supreme Court to overturn the appeals court's disqualification of her from Trump's case, because without that case, she has no power, and she knows it. The appeals court's decision overturns a Fulton County Superior Court judge's ruling that allowed Willis to remain on the case despite arguments by Trump's attorneys that she should be disqualified due to the impropriety of her romantic relationship with Nathan Wade, the top prosecutor whom she had picked to lead the case, which I agree with that. I mean, it's all out now. All the dirty laundry is hanging on the line. That her and Nathan Wade were having an affair. He was an adulterer. She was a fornicator, is what they call that, because she was not married. But she was knowingly in this open relationship with a married man, and then hires this married man to the tune of $1.5 million of taxpayer funds to do basically nothing for something he wasn't qualified for, which he admitted that he had no knowledge of RICO. That's not his area of expertise as an attorney. She hired him as a form of nepotism because they were dating on the slide. She should have been disqualified. And the only reason the judge didn't throw her out at that time was because he himself was up for re-election and didn't want to have to deal with, quite frankly, the local black churches going against him, since she was running the rounds with those black churches and they were putting her on a pedestal. He was worried probably about his own election, so let her stay, even though she acted like an ass in court. Absolutely. Brian says people filming is just for the want of publicity. And Tuck says, someone dumped a starving dog on my street some years ago. I brought it in my yard. One of my cats, who had kittens in my house, latched onto the dog's face like an alien. We got him adopted. Jane says, listening but working. As we go on here, Cyberjack Sr. has joined us, as well as all people. And he says, wouldn't it be cronyism? I don't know. I'm not sure. The Court of Appeals, in its decision, said that the remedy offered by Judge Scott McAfee, which let Willis remain on the case if Wade withdrew from handling it, was improper, which is correct. Both of them should have been removed and investigated to find out where that money went. Why are you paying someone who is not a qualified attorney, or at least not qualified for that particular case? Why are you paying him so much? And there's nothing to show for it. 2 items of discovery where he took a trip to DC is not worth $1.5 million of your tax dollars. If you're a Georgia resident, that is. For a case that really doesn't have any standing. Pretty much everything that they've tried to put against Trump has crumbled. He may be guilty of a lot of things, but this ain't it. And without that, I mean, her power is gone. This is really, it could be the death knell of her career. I know she's I know she's been reelected with the help of the local black churches. They got her reelected. Whoop-de-doo, congratulations. Which we reviewed that. We watched the video clips of the collection of black churches or church leaders, ministers and bishops and other church leaders that sat there and said, oh, she's doing God's work, God's work. God's work, God told us not to have affairs. God doesn't like that, but I guess it'll be okay. The remedy crafted by the trial court to prevent an ongoing appearance of impropriety did nothing to address the appearance of impropriety that existed at the time when DA Willis was exercising her broad pre-trial discretion about who to prosecute and what charges to bring. While we recognize that an appearance of impropriety generally is not enough to support disqualification, this is the rare case in which disqualification is mandated and no other remedy will suffice to restore public confidence in the integrity of these proceedings. We affirm, however, the denial of the appellant's motion to dismiss the indictment. So they're going to let it stand, which is kind of foolish. They're going to let that... All People says, do you think she was honestly reelected or was it another 2020 style scheme? I have no idea. It's one of those situations, though, where an elected official is going to get elected based on race or gender, especially with the support of the local big blockbuster wealthy black churches that were all behind her. So I'm sure that they coerced a lot of their constituents in the churches to go along and vote, which many of them might do. But yeah, there is a lot of loss of confidence. Not that most people trust a district attorney anyways. I don't trust her. I wouldn't want to have her prosecuting me. Look at the way she behaved in court. Look at the way she spoke to a judge while she was being investigated. Gary says alien Democrats trying to probe Trump legally. Something like that. Something like that. And of course, now she's going to try to push it to the Supreme Court of Georgia. It says the president-elect was convicted earlier this year in New York State Court of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels before the 2016 president election. Trump has yet to be sentenced, which is why he's not a convicted felon. Convicted of 34 felony counts, which is only a single charge for something that's not illegal, because Alvin Bragg manipulated the law to push that through, which is why the judge won't sentence it, because if it is and it goes to an appeals court, it's going to be thrown out. All of this is an immense waste of time and tax dollars. All People says, isn't it illegal for churches to comment on politics? Don't they lose their special tax status by doing so? In theory, they're supposed to. It's the 501c3, right? The 501c3 charity status can be revoked if you're promoting politics in your church, which for some reason, all of the black megachurches in the Atlanta area get away with over and over and over again. They get away with it constantly, and they don't get challenged. I mean, if you don't have a 501c3 in your church, then you could do whatever the hell you want, and the government can't tell you anything because you have a different tax status. But while you enjoy that tax status, you're supposed to avoid discussing or promoting openly politics during church services. But for some reason, they're able to do it. I mean, many of these churches even had Fani come up and speak during services on a couple of occasions as long as 45 minutes about herself, not about the church, not about the Bible, about herself. And you see it all the time. You see it with Martin Luther King's old church, which is a hub for politics now, where anytime any of the big wigs come into town, Bernie Sanders comes into town, Hillary Clinton comes into town, and they'll go up and they'll speak for an hour. That shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be. Ebenezer Baptist, right? I think that's the church. That should not happen. But somehow nobody wants to challenge them. Nobody wants to fight that. Nobody ever calls them out. And I'm like, how the hell did they get away with it? And all people says the black churches seem to get away with violating tax status rules, and it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair, but who's going to do what about it? I've never seen it challenged. I've never seen it challenged. So who's going to do what about it? You know? I don't know what to say about that. And that does frustrate me. It's bad enough that your average modern Christian church doesn't even teach the Bible anyways. They don't teach the scripture, and they don't teach from scripture unless they are taking something wildly out of context. And I've made the point before, when you go to church, what you should be having or obtaining some sort of biblical knowledge. But unfortunately, what happens is you sit there and you listen to the band for 45 minutes when they make you stand up for it, like you're to help you to pretend like you're enjoying it. Then they pass the plate. Then they talk about some charity that they're doing that doesn't make any sense, like digging wells in Nigeria, when they have their own neighborhood and their own parishioners that they should be taking care of. Then the pastor comes out, takes a sentence out of something from the New Testament out of context, and ties it into a story about his dad's fishing trip when he was 12 for the next 45 minutes, pass the plate again, and then everybody gets some coffee. That's not what should be happening. That's not what should be happening. But wow, I don't know. You get me going. Get me up on that pedestal, and I'll just keep going. My soapbox. Chillin' Dave is here. Glad you could make it. And Marley, man, that's me. He says, it says appellate court doesn't even have the authority to throw out Fannie. And All People says MLK was secretly Lutheran. Real name was Michael. Congregation was secretly Methodist Episcopalian. The building where they held services was Baptist. Yeah, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Jumping into the next big topic, Wall Street Journal coming up here. Talking about Elon Musk, it says Musk draws first blood with spending bill bombshell. This is getting entertaining already. It says Washington, with a 4:15 a.m. Eastern Time social media post on Wednesday, Elon Musk declared that a must-do spending bill should not pass. By early evening, the bill was dead, leaving the government barreling towards a weekend shutdown just before Christmas. Lawmakers who might have underestimated Musk's ability to shake up Washington were suddenly having second thoughts. Well, they thought the guy was a joke. He's not fooling around. Over the course of Wednesday, Musk pressured for Congress to kill the bill. He encouraged his more than 200 million followers on X to call their representatives to vote against it. And he warned that Republicans who voted for it should lose their congressional seats in 2 years. He also said Congress shouldn't pass any more legislation until Trump takes office, which would ensure a partial government shutdown until January 20th. I agree with that, because all that's been done so far from the current administration is to sabotage what might be upcoming. So they should stop anyways. Quote, stop the steal of your tax dollars. Call your elected representatives now. They are trying to railroad this thing through today, talking about the bill. The full force of Musk's pressure campaign was on display all day Wednesday before Trump weighed in to oppose the bipartisan deal struck by congressional leaders. underscoring Musk's influence on government spending and policy appeared to be much greater than initially envisioned. And it gets even more entertaining when you tie in Ramaswamy, because that spending bill was 1,500 pages, 1,500 pages long. Okay. Ramaswamy rewrote that bill onto a single document, 1 page, 75 words, 1 page, and made the point. Technically, this is all that bill was trying to do. And without all the sneaky bullshit they hide in there for their little pet projects. Chillin says that so many churches are spiritual courtrooms, not spiritual hospitals. All People says, what, contrary to myth-based lies spread by politicians, research shows that most blacks in the U.S. aren't Baptists, they're Methodists. And Chillin suggests that God will not be mocked. Well, people are in for a lot of surprise. They're in for a surprise. But I thought that was interesting. He was like, basically, and that he wasn't even happy with the 1 page document, because all it does is regurgitate the previous bill, which is all the 1,500 page bill was trying to do, because the previous bill is a waste of money mostly anyways. And if they weren't spending the way that they are, as irresponsibly as they are with your money, they wouldn't be on the edge of a shutdown over and over and over. Doesn't it seem like that happens about every couple of months now for the last few years? Because they're wasting so much of your money. So much of your money. Marley said, blame Elon for making the Republicans decent on their own bill. Something like that. And Lori is here, says, listening but busy. That's all right. Glad you got an ear on. Glad you've got an ear on. There's a quote here. It says, our constituents, the people who elected us, are listening to Musk, said Representative Andy Barr. My phone was ringing off the hook today. My phone was ringing off the hook today. Good. Pester them. Not that they're ever going to listen. Not that they're ever going to listen. And I've made that argument before that, people tell you, oh, write your congressman, call your congressman. Do you think they're ever going to hear any of that? That's why they have interns, so that they can block all of that and not ever have to really actually listen to anything that you have to say. They don't care what you have to say. They don't care what you have to say. Most of them don't care what you have to say. But I think that's really interesting, though, and it makes an excellent point that you've got a 1,500 page document and it can be narrowed down to a single page, and that single page is even still too much. Goes to show you how much time they're wasting as well as the money. And there's no excuse for shutdowns or the threat of shutdowns like every other month for the last few years. Because it seems like all through the Biden administration, we've been like that close to a shutdown. Shut down. See if I care. Shut down. What's it going to change? What's it going to hurt? I really could care less. I really could care less. I wish you would shut down. Because mostly you're just wasting our time and money anyways. Really easy to waste money when it's someone else's. And they have no two ways about wasting your tax dollars, about spending it. They don't seem to care at all. I see I'm having a scrolling issue. Am I still audible? As long as you can hear me clearly, I'm fine. But the video is getting a little choppy, I noticed. So let me know if I'm still audibly good, at the very least here. Restream. As we get ready to open up a New York Post article. This is something something that came up that I thought was kind of interesting here. New York Police Department's $400,000 a year top earner, Quatisha or Quathisha, TH should be a th, Quathisha Epps is retiring early as astronomical overtime pay is investigated. New York, the police department's highest paid employee, who shoveled in more than $400,000 last year, filed for retirement this week and then was suspended amid an internal affairs probe into her astronomical overtime, the Post has learned. And there's a photograph of her. If I can get that. Oh, here we go. That's even better. There's the photograph you want to see right there. Lieutenant Quathisha Epps will retire shy of 20 years with the department, sources say. And early, oh, now it comes up. The news article's being choppy now. An early exit that will impact her pension and cost her a $12,000 a year supplement for cops who reach the 2-decade mark. Leaving money on the table is seemingly uncharacteristic for Epps, who raised eyebrows by pulling in roughly $204,000 in overtime last year for her administrative job in the New York Police Department Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry's office, according to payroll. Sources told the Post that Epps' whopping overtime was capped after the Post's exclusive report last month on her pay. She was also told she'd be put back on patrol, an apparently unappetizing prospect after her cushy desk job, according to sources. There's no way she was going out on patrol, sources tell the Post. Epps, who is 51, also faced an internal affairs investigation into her overtime. Investigators were probing allegations she falsified overtime hours and signed off on time slips herself, as well as complaints of her coming in to work late, leaving early, or not showing up at all. Records show that last year she worked nearly 1,627 hours of overtime on top of her regular shift, an average of 74 hours per week. The overtime plus her $164,477 base salary, that's a pretty good base salary for law enforcement. While everybody in law enforcement complains they don't get paid enough, pushed Epps' total compensation past $400,000 and made her the highest paid police department employee. By comparison, her boss, Madry, made roughly $292,000 the same year. Epps' eye-watering overtime ranked many rank-and-file cops. And there's a picture of her. I'll leave that up. That's her official photo. Oh, no. Unbelievable. Talk about overtime. But the argument, of course, is that there was no actual overtime. Brian says the people taking our tax dollars are parasites. John says I'm loud and clear. Good. And Marley says federal employees won't get paid. That's a huge issue. Tuck says audio is good, video is sketchy. Yeah, it was acting up. It was acting up. And Tuck invokes the Cloward-Piven model. That's a lot of money. That's an incredible amount of money. And I'm willing to bet that the reason that she retired is because of the investigation. She's probably trying to get ahead of it. It's amazing how many people in New York City government or on the New York City payroll, since she's not in government, she's just employed by the city. How many of these people want to retire or leave their job otherwise prior to an investigation? like the story we read yesterday. Everybody wants to retire early, but it's not going to stop the investigation, so it doesn't make any sense. They resign their commission, like Mayor Adams' chief aide, who left her job Sunday, just past Sunday, and then yesterday she's indicted for money laundering and taking bribes and all sorts of things. That's incredible. And again, that's your tax dollars at work. That's your tax dollars at work. 400,000 overtime. It's incredible. What are you going to do? Jumping from New York to California here. More espionage. Biden better hurry up and pardon this person before it's too late. And this is going to be a Washington Post article coming up here, hopefully, because Restream is acting up a little bit today. California campaign manager arrested and charged as a Chinese agent. Here we go again. A lot of that happens in California. A Chinese national was arrested Thursday on charges of serving as an unregistered foreign agent for China while working as a campaign manager at a local election, a case that U.S. Justice Department officials described as part of a disturbing trend of the Chinese government's attempting to place pro-Beijing candidates in power. Why is anyone who is not a citizen of this country working on a campaign in this country? That should have been your red flag right there. According to a criminal complaint filed on Thursday, Yao Ning Mike's son, Mike I guess is the nickname, a well-known cultural figure within the Chinese diaspora, is accused of sending reports to Chinese government officials while managing the campaign of a California city council candidate who won an election in 2022. Martin Estrada, U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, said in a call with reports to the city council member is unnamed because that person is not yet charged. He said that the investigation is ongoing and that they expect further facts to come to light. So we could see another arrest in this from someone who is a lawmaker. The complaint said that both son and the city council member were directly in contact with a man sentenced last month on federal charges of acting as a foreign agent for China. That man, Chen Jun, was sentenced in November to 20 months in prison for attempting to bribe IRS officials as part of a scheme led by the Chinese government. Okay. Wait, they tried to bribe the IRS and they didn't take it? That's surprising to me because, they operate almost like the mob. The complaint also alleges that Sun requested $80,000 in funding from Chinese government agents to support his and Chen's efforts to promote Chinese interests in the United States and suppress anti-Beijing groups, including those in support of Taiwan's independence. The People's Republic of China is seeking to influence foreign and domestic policies in the United States. To do so, government officials in China are seeking to help get elected individuals who they see as being friendly to Chinese foreign policy, and that's according to Estrada. That's a quote. You mean like Tim Walz? I'm pretty sure Tim Walz is on that list. Sun is charged with acting as an unregistered foreign agent on behalf of the Chinese government, a charge distinct from espionage as it generally does not involve the collection of sensitive information and thus carries significantly lower penalties. Recently, there has been a surge in similar charges brought against individuals in the Chinese diaspora. Linda Sun, I remember her, a former senior aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul and former Governor Andrew Cuomo, was arrested in September and charged with acting as an unregistered agent on behalf of the Chinese government. On Wednesday, one of two men arrested in 2003 and accused of illegally operating a secret Chinese police station in New York pleaded guilty, also on charges of acting as unregistered foreign agents. Incredible. Incredible. And Semper Five is here. It says sorting pew accessories. I think I can actually say gun on ScrewTube. I don't think you can say it on Facebook though. I'm pretty sure you can't say it on Facebook at all. You have to, and it doesn't make any sense. In the lead up to this year's presidential election, U.S. intelligence officials warned that Beijing was increasingly targeting down ballot state and local races with influence operations. It's because the lower you go, the less you have to give. I mean, take a look. Take a look at what it takes to even pass a bribe through. It's not that much. Look at how many people were bribed into taking the jab with like a free donut or a free cup of coffee somewhere. Oh, if you bring your Vax card, we'll totally like give you a free donut at Krispy Kreme. Oh, wow, let me rush to the doctor. Some people, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Brian says Zuckerberg is worse than Google Tube. Yeah. Zuckerbook, he says. Zuckerbook, Lizard Boy. Unbelievable. Chen, whose phone was seized in 2020 in his 2023 arrest, also held multiple extended phone calls with the unnamed city council member. In one message, he said he hoped the newly elected official would make Chinese people proud. Sell out your country for a few dollars, and probably not even that much either. But yeah, another one bites the dust. More people from China getting caught up. If they don't get pardoned. Because you remember in that massive list of pardons that were handed out by Biden, we've talked about it several times since it's happened, 1,583, if I remember correctly, in total. On that one day, there were people, Chinese people, who were sitting in prison for espionage on that list. Unbelievable. Tuck says souls traded for Krispy Kreme donuts and a couple of cheeseburgers. Yeah, because you know they had that stuff. Oh, well, you can get it free. Yeah, I remember that. Somebody was it Crystals? Somebody was giving away cheeseburgers, right? Or you can get the Krispy Kreme donut or Dunkin' Donut coffee, and they had all these incentives where if you went around with your little card that says you got your little poke, you can get like a free something here or there. And it's incredible. It's incredible. It reminds me of ZPG, a film from the 70s, and ZPG stands for Zero Population Growth. Really interesting post-apocalyptic film where in this film, because of massive overpopulation and pollution, for a 30-year period, if I remember correctly, people were not allowed to procreate. So you could have sex, but you could not get pregnant. You couldn't have a child. And if you were caught pregnant or with a child that wasn't authorized, you and the child would be executed immediately. And if you thought you knew someone had a kid and you turned them in, you would get an extra food ration card for that month. So yeah, and the truth in that being, it don't take much. How many people call code compliance on someone because they don't like them? And they don't get a damn thing for it. Just for the satisfaction of knowing they screwed somebody up. Monkey is here. Glad you could make it today. I don't have the other monkey. I don't have Monkey Cat in the room with me. We're going to jump to DC here and talk about everyone's favorite uncle. Dear old, sweet old, lovable old, reliable old, transparent old, cognitive old Uncle Joe. Excuse me, Daily Beast article. Damning report describes how aides shielded declining Biden from scrutiny. And Tuck says, so the CCP took ZPG as an inspiration for policy. Could be. Could be. But it's an interesting film. It's worth taking a look at. One particularly interesting, and keep in mind, this is an old film. I'm pretty sure it's early, like 71, 72, something like that. Um, there's one section where he goes, the one of the main characters goes to the library to try to look up certain information and gets interrogated because the information that they thought he was looking at was prohibited. They were on him like that. The computer picked up on it, and they had an agent corner him practically as soon as he opened it up. But back to the president here, it says President Joe Biden's inner circle kept his interaction short and tightly scripted, allowing his declining energy levels to remain under wraps. He also held other top lawmakers and even his own pollsters at arm's length, according to damning new reports. The former senator and vice president has long surrounded himself with a small group of loyal advisors who, thanks to their deep knowledge of both the president and of Washington, serve as particularly effective proxies. When Biden was elected president in the middle of the C virus pandemic, aides limited in-person meetings to minimize his risk of exposure. They also wanted to prevent the types of gaffes and other rhetorical missteps that have characterized his long political career. But after the pandemic, the barriers that have been erected between the president, high-ranking officials, and the public hardened instead of softening. Many of the sources chalked up the restricted access to an especially powerful inner circle rather than a deliberate attempt to hide any age-related decline. But regardless of their motives, the result was that the public was largely blindsided when the president struggled to string together a coherent argument in his first and only debate against Republican challenger Donald Trump in June. Yeah, Trump picked him apart in that. Over the past 2 years, Biden's meetings with cabinet officials have been relatively infrequent and often tightly scripted, according to the Wall Street Journal. Cabinet members often met with senior advisors who then brought the issue to the president before reporting back. When the president did show up, aides seemed to do an excessive amount of hand-holding, sources said, as the president's energy seemed to wane. His eager beaver staff were quick to jump in and handle things for him. Senator Joe Manchin told the Journal, and that's from West Virginia. White House spokesman Andrew Yates told the Journal Biden meets regularly with key cabinet members and that in every administration it's normal for people to want to spend more time with the president than what's available. He added that any close handling was related to concerns about Biden's propensity to overshare, not his age or mental acuity, and that the senior staff executed Biden's agenda under his direction. I don't believe that. I really don't. And again, Adrian says Biden EO Christmas Eve 2024 as a holiday. But I don't believe it because the mental decline has been longer than just his presidency. And I've brought this up several times. And for those of you who were like listening for the first time or didn't realize, Biden had 2 brain surgeries in the 80s for an aneurysm. And I think the last surgery was in 1987. And that's when all of this started. Since 1987, the gaffes, the hair smelling, the weird touching, the inability to string a sentence together, that all happened as far back as 1987. So it's not during his presidency that they've been covering for him. They've been covering for him for decades. Nearly 40 years. Think about that. 87 was how long ago? How long ago was 1987? It's nearly close to 40 years. Just off the top of my head. I know it's not exactly 40, but that's pretty close. They've been covering for this guy. And they kept him a senator. They made him a vice president. And they made him a president. And he's been getting strings pulled the whole time because his mind hasn't been there for that long. Eric Peterson's hand holding literally, he needed help walking off the stage at the debate. That's right. Trump took off and he was led to a series of steps and then had to be guided down. It was only 2 steps too, right? And Country says, I'm not a fan of Biden or the left, but it's sad that they're pushing an old man with dementia to stay in politics for their own gain. And Tuck says, in 87, I was still playing with G.I. Joes. Nothing wrong with that. That's the Raw era. A real American hero era based off of the cartoon show. And the subsequent comic, although the Marvel comic and the Sunbow production television after-school cartoon are 2 different worlds entirely, 2 entirely different writing styles. But yeah, what are you going to do? But he's been off of it for that long. He's been off of it for that long. So it's a shame, really. It truly is. It truly is. And we've been lied to all that time. We've been lied to all of that time by these people. But we're supposed to trust them. We're supposed to trust them. And it ties in here now that all of this is coming out because of the because really Trump's coming into office and they all want to get ahead of it as far as they can or as fast as they can. Tuck says, don't feel sorry for Biden. He's evil and he's getting top-notch medical treatment all the time. He's allowed himself to be a puppet. So no, don't feel too sorry for him. New York Post article coming up, and this is tying into the Afghanistan withdrawal because now that this has been exposed as part of that decline. Mentally fatigued Biden skipped calls from concerned POL before disastrous Afghanistan pullout. President Biden was so mentally fatigued, he skipped out on a phone call from the chair of the powerful House Armed Services Committee ahead of the U.S.'s disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Biden, the oldest president in U.S. history, was incredibly hard to reach, even for lawmakers in his own party, as his aides attempted to keep Biden's evident mental and physical decline under tight wraps, according to bombshell reports from the Wall Street Journal. That inaccessibility proved to be immensely consequential for one of the administration's biggest snafus that would mar the remainder of Biden's presidency. Representative Adam Smith, chair of the House Armed Services Committee, had tried to contact the president in 2021 to share his concerns about the planned withdrawal from Afghanistan. Smith said he was worried about the administration's optimistic comments about pulling out from Afghanistan, which, after working extensively on the issue, the congressman believed would be significantly more difficult than White House officials were letting on, and wanted to share findings. Quote, I was begging them to set expectations low, but he couldn't get the commander-in-chief on the phone. 13 U.S. service members and more than 170 Afghans were killed in the chaotic evacuation, which ended the longest conflict in U.S. history and left the Taliban victorious and in charge. The U.S. also abandoned $7 billion in weapons and other military equipment. In the aftermath, Smith commented to the Washington Post that Biden's administration lacked a clear-eyed view of the toppled U.S.-backed government's durability. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, enraged over Smith's remarks, called the congressman to chew his ear, but Smith ultimately ended up giving it back to Blinken, according to Wall Street Journal. Blinken would later accept responsibility for the Afghanistan catastrophe. Soon afterward, Smith also received an apologetic call from Biden, the only call Biden made to Smith in 4 years in the White House. Incredible. Incredible. Monkey says now the news stations are just now showing Biden was mentally unstable the whole time, trying to show to Trump that, see, we definitely knew Biden wasn't all there the whole time. Yeah, but you covered it up. You could have said something and you didn't. You played along. You played along, and you didn't play along out of fear. I can understand. I don't condone it necessarily, but I understand playing along out of fear, because people will do that. Go along to get along because you're afraid of the backlash. You're afraid of getting hurt. You're afraid of getting sued. You're afraid of going to jail. You're afraid of getting killed. Whatever it is, you saw a lot of that in Eastern Bloc Eastern Bloc communist countries during the Cold War. People were scared to death to even talk or to do anything. These people covered this up for a paycheck. They were getting something out of it. They were getting something out of it. So it wasn't even out of fear. Because you could make that argument. You could sit there, again, Cold War era, you're in the USSR and you know something shady's going on. Better shut up or else you'll go home and your family won't be there. That's when you keep your mouth shut. I get it. These people did this so that they can keep the money flowing. And now they want to act like they're all on board with the incoming regime, as if that can be trusted now. You've shown yourself to not be trustworthy. Remember, if you watched the film V, his second primary target was the media. First, it was corrupt police. Then it was the media. Hi, come here. I have a guest. My little sweet friend, Granny Smith. Hi, Granny. Where did you come from, my dear? You were taking a nap someplace? This is Granny Smith, everybody, the cat that won't leave. Isn't that right, honey? You won't go anywhere, will you? She will not leave. She will not allow herself to be adopted. She will not go anywhere near an opened exterior door, not even into the garage. Former semi-feral outdoor only cat. And once she was indoors, she decided that's it. That's it. She likes it like this. It's okay, sweetheart. You can stay. You can stay. You want me to put you back down? I got to put you back down anyways because I need to pull up the next story here in a minute. But that's Granny Smith, everybody. There you go, dear. I have to watch out for her because she's very quiet. And I'll turn around and she'll be sitting right next to my foot. And I'm always afraid I'm going to end up drop kicking her, especially since I wear steel-toed boots all the time. And I don't want to hurt her. I don't want to hurt her. She's already been hurt enough. I mean, she's the one that's crippled. She walks with a really bad limp because she had that broken elbow and it never healed correctly. Poor thing. I love them all. I love taking care of them. I really do. I really do. But while we're on the subject of animals, I don't know if you've seen this. This is very bizarre. And we're going to jump to a Smithsonian Magazine article. Have you seen this in the news? Pay close attention. Squirrels are displaying widespread carnivorous behavior for the first time in a California park. This behavior has never been seen before in these animals. And recently it's been discovered. In the rolling green hills of California's Briones Regional Park, not far from the urban bustle of Oakland and Berkeley, the squirrels are not what they seem. Instead of simply stuffing cheeks with fruits, nuts, and seeds, the California ground squirrels there are now known to hunt and kill to decapitate and consume voles, a fellow rodent species, according to research published Wednesday in the Journal of Ethology. Yeah. So they're hunting and killing smaller animals. And that's not normal squirrel behavior. Most people are very familiar with squirrels, accustomed to seeing the animal on the streets or in their yards, and Smith is even more so since 2013. He has led the long-term behavioral ecology of California ground squirrels project, which monitors squirrel genetics, social behavior, and physiological stress responses in the San Francisco Bay Area. But even with her intimate knowledge of the rodents, it was only this year Her research team has observed ground squirrels actively pursuing and eating meat. The initial discovery was made by undergraduate researchers who returned from the field site in Briones Regional Park earlier this year with video of squirrels' behavior to show their incredulous supervisors. And that's the, I'm not going to play the clip, but that's the squirrel, one of the squirrels there, having killed and now eating a vole. Jane says, oh my, squirrel's probably tired of chemical spreaded nuts and leaves. Wonder if it'll attack birds. And Tuck says, when I was rescuing, I had a bedroom door that opened to the yard. I installed a pet door. On cool mornings, I'd wake up to 2 to 6 cats cuddling me for warmth, always worried I'd roll over on one. Yeah, I worry about that too at night because I don't know what's what. I don't know what's what because the cats will get on the bed with us and, you know, you move around and there they are. And the thing is, if Miss Kitty is on there, Miss Kitty gets scared if you touch her in certain ways. So I can reach and grab a cat and most of them don't care. But if it's Miss Kitty, she'll panic and bite my hand. Jane says, that's funny, eating a vole. Yeah, that's extremely unusual behavior. And I would be curious to see what has changed in the environment with those squirrels to get them to do something like this. And Jane says, I wonder if you put pieces of meat on trees, will squirrels eat it? And they want to conduct an experiment. I don't know. I've never seen them to do it. You know, even if I put meat out, I've put meat out in the yard. Squirrels don't seem interested. But what's Tuck says there's biologist documentation of gray squirrels eating bugs, lizards, bird eggs, and hatchlings and mice. Interesting. But they have not found the squirrels in this region to have done anything like that before. And you got to wonder what's changed in the environment to encourage it. That's my question. Raccoon says we keep cutting down trees and forest fires, killing off food supply. It says the animals. I think that's incorrect. It says we can. The animals do but adapt. So there's a typo there somewhere. But yeah, I mean, to a point, I suppose they're opportunists, but they're not designed specifically for the consumption of flesh. But they have been shown to be opportunist eaters in the past. Although I couldn't imagine them eating anything further than insects. They're not like raccoons or possums or something like that that'll eat anything. Complete omnivores. Raccoon corrects that. It says, what can the animals do but adapt? Yeah, and I'm sure part of it's our fault. I'm sure part of it is our fault. Right, Granny? You think so? Granny Smith, everybody. Is that right, dear? Granny agrees. It's partially our fault because human beings poison everything they touch. As we get close to the hour here, and H12 says too much eating out of McDonald's dumpster. That could be, you know, because a lot of these animals, they do scavenge garbage for their food. They do scavenge through garbage for their food. That is a possibility. Maybe they've just developed a taste for it now. Now you're gonna have to watch out for squirrels trying to kill you in the middle of the night. They ought to do that as a movie now. Squirrel-nado instead of Sharknado, with carnivorous squirrels or flying squirrels. Anyways, with that, we're at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and/or watching Coffee Talk. And you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And with that, we will see you all again on